Hi, welcome to the demonstration of AB Suite 8.0 new features, and it's specifically about the implementation of AB Suite for MCP platform. My name is Arti Sahu and I am a lead engineer working on the AB Suite MCP product. I am going to demonstrate the following AB Suite 8.0 MCP runtime features. First, DMS2 structure level encryption, secure FTP, support TCP/IP encryption between the client and the Apple server. Then we have NFSs, support for big buffer ISPECs in intra and inter-host communication, larger parameter strings, and VSS2 optimization of block sizes for internal database structures. DMS2 structure level encryption. This encryption feature allows all the datasets and associated subsets to be encrypted. You must choose the AES GCM encryption algorithm to use with structure level encryption. The other algorithm is not supported. Due to the encryption process, there is a memory overhead when DMS2 structure level encryption is enabled for any structure. Note that the memory overhead is due to 2 copies of the record buffer. Here are the properties that we need to set to support the structure level encryption for datasets and their associated sets and subsets. Set the data encryption segment configuration property to AES GCM. For ISPECs and classes, set the secure technique class model property to structure encryption. For internal structures, set the structure encrypt property to true. DMS2 SLE can only be used with standard or table ISPEC type. So, when we set these properties and then deploy the application, we are able to see the str encrypt is equal to true in the DMS file as highlighted here. Secure FTP. This feature provides encryption of the source files transferred from the developer client to the MCP host during a deployment. In standard file transfer protocol, there is a lack of privacy and integrity, making it fairly easy for a hacker to gain access and capture or modify the data while it's in transit. AB Suite 8.0 provides Secure FTP, which is an extension of standard FTP and adds support for the transport layer security, that is TLS 1.2, below the standard FTP protocol to encrypt the control and or data channels. There are a few prerequisites that we need to address before using AB Suite 8.0 MCP Secure FTP. Using Security Center, you must create a certificate, then install it for the MCP host. The FTP configuration file on the host must be updated with an SSL mode of implicit FTPS. Additionally, Secure Socket Layer needs to be enabled for TCP/IP. The .p7v certificate that was created earlier must be given to the client to install in their Windows Trusted Store. When you set the new deployment configuration property, use Secure FTP to true, the client will use port 990 instead of standard port 21 for the FTP connection. When we deploy the AB Suite application with Use Secure FTP enabled, we can see a message in the build log that says Secure FTP is enabled. With a higher level of logging enabled, we can see of all the FTP logging information. To do this, we need to create a registry named FTP logging under the logging key of HKey local machine. Now, I want to deploy this AB Suite application with Use Secure FTP enabled. We'll look at the application afterwards to confirm that the deployment went fine. For this example, I have maximum logging enabled, so the build log is quite verbose. After a successful deployment, we have a working application. Here is the menu screen from the sample application. Encryption for client and Apple Build connection. This feature provides encryption of the communication between the target builder client and the host Apple Build server to protect any sensitive data during a deployment. First, we need to install the Apple Build server certificate. A new top-level folder configuration property named Use Secure Connection has been added. When this property is set to true, Apple Build will check whether the client has a certificate matching the one expected by the Apple Build host server. If one is present, the connection will be established, and the communication between the client and the server will be encrypted. There are a few prerequisites that we need to address before using AB Suite 8.0 MCP Use Secure Connection. Using Security Center, you must create a certificate, then install it for the MCP host. Enable SSL for TCP/IP. Install Apple Build 8.0 INI file. Uncomment the line containing the TLS key, and on the same line, change the certificate name to yours as defined in Security Center. The .p7v certificate that was created earlier must be given to the client to install in their Windows Trusted Store. When you set the new deployment configuration property, Use Secure Connection to true, the communication between the client and the Apple Build server be encrypted. You can use Agile Business Suite installation and configuration guide for reference. Note that a specific Apple Build supports either no encryption, which is the default, or encryption. It cannot handle a mixture of both. Now, I want to deploy this AB Suite application with Use Secure Connection enabled. We'll look at the application to confirm that the deployment went well. For this example, I have maximum logging enabled, so the build log is quite verbose. We can see here the message handshake is successful between the client and Apple Build server, and login successful to builder server message. This shows the deployment is successful when Use Secure Connection property is enabled. New feature suggestions. Support for big buffers in intra and inter-host communication. In the past, ABSuite supported a limit of 2 KB of data for both intra-host and inter-host communication. Now, an ABSuite 8.0 application can support up to 65 KB of data for intra-host and inter-host communication. Business Integrator accepts a larger buffer as well, and it's approximately 10 KB. Here is some ABSuite LDL plus logic where we send 65 KB of data from the client and we receive the same data packets in the server. First, I will show you the interhost communication. Then I'll show you the application that sends the data to the business integrator. This is the client application where we have DMSII spec with 65K data and we are sending the data to the server. This is the server. The server is capable of receiving 65 kV data from the client. I have deployed both the applications and you'll see the result now. Let's enter the destination host details. And we can see the status is OK and last byte of 65K packet. This is the application where we are sending 9K packets to BI. Let's bring up the application. Here we need to enter a word and BI will return the last position of the word. And the status shows OK. Allow big parameter strings. ABSuite 8.0 provides larger strings to the customers to exchange larger data packets up to 6 MB through the external class library call, method calls, and additional string manipulations such as move. The limits for attach has also been increased from 32 KB to 64 KB and 16 KB to 32 KB for kanji, while a detach will handle a 6 MB of string. Here is the LDL plus logic where we are calling the external class method and the external library replaces the last digit with a star. Then we are calling the segment method where it replaces the last digit with a hash. ABSuite 8.0 also supports the larger string operations on complex move, attach and detach operations. These are the tests which are performed to prove that we are using larger parameter strings. In the previous slides, for the LDL plus detach command, we are detaching the last character of the 6 MB string and getting that in the destination string. Hence, we are getting the value as hash, which is an expected behavior. In attach operation, as it supports 64 KB, we are getting the last two characters of the 64 KB string and getting the value as hash star. This we are expecting. In move LDL plus command, here we are doing some complex operation where we are getting the last character of the 6 MB string and comparing this value with the expected value and it looks correct. Similarly, we are calling the public segment method and external class method and getting the expected result. This is the LDL plus logic in the public segment method where we are replacing the last character of the big string to hash. Here is the result from calling into public segment method from the algol program. Presently, users may enable VSS to optimize at the segment configuration or on individual user persistent structures. Additionally, when the segment configuration optimized block size to VSS2 is set to true or false, then the corresponding optimized block size to VSS2 settings for all user persistent structures are changed accordingly. The intention of this feature is to allow the user to selectively enable optimized block size to VSS2 on the internal database structures. This is the configuration property for internal database structures. Now, I will show you an example where we will enable the VSS to optimize for some of the internal datasets, and then we will show you the generated source. Here is the sample application, and I am enabling the VSS to optimize for GLB security and ROC dataset. So let's enable this. Let's generate the application. After a successful deployment, we will able to see the generated source for these datasets. Now we are able to see VSS2 optimize is equal to true for GLV security dataset and its associated set. Also VSS2 optimize is equal to true for ROC hash dataset and its associated set and subsets. Now we are at the end of the snippet presentation on AB Suite for MCP platform within 8.0. Thanks for your time, and I would wish you well for using the product.